Dr. Joseph Wu, the Foreign Minister of Taiwan, had an exclusive conversation with NewsX. Now, we evidently saw a few things that we should talk about here. Dr. Wu emphasized on the dynamic relationship between India and Taiwan, how India's pivotal role as the largest democracy has highlighted the country's skilled population as well. He also reaffirmed his dedicated efforts towards enhancing cooperation between Taiwan and India. Notably, one thing that needs to be focused is how Dr. Wu expressed concerns regarding China's escalating military pressure on Taiwan and its assertive actions in the South China Sea. He also said, and I quote, China has been targeting Taiwan to apply a lot of military pressure. He also emphasized the need for democracies to unite in the face of heightened tensions, noting the strategic importance of Taiwan in maintaining peace and stability in this region. Well, as we jump in this discussion today, we are going to talk about how India-Taiwan's dynamic has grown out to be stronger than ever before in the years that have gone by, and how China has been a growing concern for the country as well. And to talk about this on the show, we have with us Professor Madhav Nalapat, Editorial Director of the Sunday Guardian. Also joining us is Ambassador Bhaswati Mukherjee, former diplomat. Mr. Pathakrit Main, Strategic and International Affairs expert, also with us on the program. Last but not the least, Dr. Satish Rath, entrepreneur and scientist, with us on the show as well. Professor Nalapat, I'll begin with you, sir. We heard the minister talk about India and Taiwan and how the strategic relationship has come of age in the last few years. But of course, the common elephant in the room for both is China. He spoke about what China has been doing in the South China Sea. He also said that, in his own way, that the only checkpoint at this point in time that can deter China from this kind of an aggressive and autocratic behavior is the country of India.
Well, I'd like to say that the party that Mr. Foreign Minister Wu is part of, the Democratic Progressive Party, has always stood for Taiwan to be a free and democratic country. They have made no bones about the fact that they cannot accept the authoritarian system of the PRC, no matter in what camouflage it is cloaked. We have all seen in 2019 what happened to Deng Xiaoping's promise of 50 years of one country, two systems. Long before 50 years was elapsed. In fact, all the freedoms of Hong Kong were extinguished. And today Hong Kong is just like any other city in the PRC. So there is one country, one system. And Hong Kong is a part of that one country and one system. So the Taiwanese people have over the years been accustomed to democracy, and they have taken to democracy extremely well. And if I may say so, the government led by Dr. Tsai Ing-wen, President Tsai, who, by the way, has been to India, is extremely friendly towards India and has worked out the southbound policy in which you have to look south. Previously, the Taiwanese used to look to their west, to China. But the fact is that it is becoming more and more difficult to operate in China, mainly because they are being told to basically be traitors to their own country. When you work in China, the Chinese say you have to be loyal to the Communist Party of China and not to your own country. And it is, patriotic Taiwanese find that very difficult. So large number of Taiwanese companies are now looking at relocating. Many of them are looking at the world's biggest democracy, which is India. So I think it's very timely that NewsX interviewed Foreign Minister Wu. Foreign Minister Wu has been a tireless advocate of democracy. He's been a tireless advocate of peace. All that the Taiwanese are asking for is peace and the maintenance of status quo across the Taiwan Straits. So that is all that they're asking for. They want the Taiwanese people to continue to enjoy the benefits of democracy. And they want them to continue to enjoy that in a peaceful atmosphere. And all the while, they are being challenged by a hostile neighbor, which is ruled by a party whose ideology is completely against democracy, is become very aggressive and expansionist. And if I may say so, what Taiwan is facing is what all the democracies in the world are facing. And Taiwan is essential to security of the Indo-Pacific. I think we in India recognize fully well, along with our other Quad partners. And I really believe that NewsX has done a very noble service to the cause of democracy and to the cause of stability in the Indo-Pacific by this interview with Foreign Minister Wu.
Absolutely right, sir. Ambassador Mukherjee, the other important and noteworthy observation was also that the minister pointed out towards China's ambitions. Its unsolicited ambitions in the Indian Ocean need to be checked and should not be taken lightly. Now, this is also something that India has been wary of, India has been observant about. But do you think this needs more attention?
I think, first of all, I would like to congratulate NewsX for this excellent interview, as Professor Nalapat said. I think it needs the attention of United States and AUKUS, first of all, because if there is tension in that area, you could be staring at the beginning of World War III. So that's the first issue here, and that is where the navies of AUKUS should be fully prepared, along with the navies of Quad, of course, which includes our own navy. But more than that, the point is that the buzzword is that there is a military imbalance between Taiwan and China. So perhaps in a normal warfare, without outside intervention, it would be relatively easy for China to swallow up Taiwan. But it would come with a huge cost, which the Chinese may not want. And the huge cost would be irreparable damage to the Chinese economy, which is globally interconnected. And if you look at the way that China has carefully respected, to a great extent, sanctions on Russia, it means that China understands that its economy is interconnected, especially with the West, and therefore they may not do so. From our perspective, we have, at least in the Ministry of External Affairs, for many years, advocated a pro-Taiwan business policy. We've always had business presence officially in Taiwan that has been upgraded. The Taiwanese, as you know, are world leaders on semiconductors, and we have encouraged them to establish business here in India because we want to be self-sufficient in semiconductors. Taiwan presents a very friendly environment, and in fact there are many Indians who are currently in Hong Kong who, for reasons that Professor Nalapat eloquently outlined, are moving actually to Taiwan with their assets because they think that Taiwan has the kind of business opportunities which Hong Kong once had. It has the kind of climate which is much more akin to Hong Kong than Singapore. Singapore's climate is unfortunately not half as nice as Hong Kong or Taiwan. And there is a regular flow of business and assets now going from India to Taiwan and back. What does it mean in terms of India's foreign policy? India has still advocated a one China policy. So for that matter have the Americans. But that does not stop any country from conducting a vigorous business policy and also ensuring that Taiwan is not swallowed up by the Chinese dragon by putting various impediments in its way, which in a way they can see very clearly from the outcome of the Ukraine conflict. Because although Putin has managed very well to steer the Russian economy, there is no doubt that it has impacted Russia's GDP, and there is no doubt that China, being a much larger economy, would be much more impacted by global sanctions, and it would also affect its standing in Asia, where it considers itself to be the leading power, much higher in the ranking than India, and where it considers itself to be second only to the United States. And that perception of China's great power would be strongly affected if it swallows up Taiwan. And that, in a way, is the greatest restraint, self-restraint of China in threatening Taiwan, doing military exercises, bringing its warships close, but not actually invading. And it is for the rest of the world, particularly for big countries like India, but more than India, for the United States to ensure that that delicate balance of power is not disturbed Because if it is, you could be staring at the beginning of World War III. Beneath.
Pathikrit. And the fact of the matter is, India and Taiwan are organically aligned, Pathikrit, because, India's ambition and India's, fervor into the semiconductor industry is in more ways than one going to be supported and, fueled by, our relationship with Taiwan.
Oh,
and that is a problem for China as well.
Yeah, absolutely, Vinit. There are three major areas of convergence, and it's a symbiotic relationship. First of all, Taiwan today controls almost 66% of the global semiconductor supply chain. But when it comes to creating large-scale manufacturing facilities, which can also work to create a resilient supply chain as well as a place which would be some kind of a captive market, I think there cannot be a better option than India. And therefore, you see companies like TSMC or PSMC are putting in quite a bit of effort to set up their semiconductor plants in India as part of India's, there's a semiconductor mission which has been set up by government of India, which means that India is working on developing its own semiconductor manufacturing capability on a mission mode. But when it comes to issues of chip fabrication, I think there are very few countries which have developed that kind of capacity, which Taiwan has developed. See, the difference between Taiwan and Ukraine is this, that if Taiwan falls, God forbid, then the whole global semiconductor stranglehold will be in the Chinese hand, which nobody wants. And therefore, it is imperative that everybody would come to their rescue, or at least to create a certain level of deterrence. Deterrence is a better word than to say that they'll come and fight Taiwan's war. And therefore, on issues of, say, number one, culture, on issues of semiconductors, on issue of something as critical as contract manufacturing, there were some major policy initiatives taken by government of India in the last few years, which includes allowing 100% FDI in contract manufacturing, as well as reducing the corporate tax rates to a range which is globally competitive today. And it creates a kind of an ecosystem where Taiwanese are far more comfortable today to come and invest, and we see those things happening, whether it's Foxconn, PSMC or TSMC, showing initiatives. Some have already set up shops, and in the next 10 years, I'm very confident there will be huge amount of investment that would come. India does need that investment in terms of developing the infrastructural capacity to absorb investments in other sectors. Yes, you are right, China would not like it. There is no denial of that fact, and you might even see disinformation campaigns being done against India. You might even see it deliberately, certain elements discreetly or directly trying to foment unrest in some of the manufacturing facilities. You might even see globally the image of India would be deliberately attempted to be tarnished, as some of the Western media outlets also equally do. But I think today India has shown enough resilience, both in terms of its economic capability, both as well as stability of the government is concerned, and as well as investor confidence that in spite of all the efforts against on issues of disinformation, on attempts being made to create anarchy kind of situation, most of these have failed because of tremendous resilience that people of the country, the government have shown time and again. So I'm sure it's a great relationship which can progress, move forward. And I think both these countries love democracy, loves freedom of speech. But yes, we must never forget that as you develop this relationship, certain elements, maybe from outside, will try to create some kind of bottlenecks, some kind of impediments, and we need to be prepared for that. It should not come as a surprise. Let's see how it works out. But I think one thing we must remember, even though the Taiwanese do feel threatened by what the Chinese do, I think the Taiwanese today also have developed that capacity to absorb those threats. The threats may not get converted to a real-time attack for several reasons. I'll just give two. Russia, what it did to Ukraine, may not be easily replicable by the Chinese, because the Russians have very limited dependence on the rest of the world except for export of commodities. China even today is a commodity importing country. China continues to be an export-driven economy. It cannot afford to have the sanctions which with Russia can have. So I think there are fundamental differences. Ukraine was not something which could have impacted the rest of the world. Let's be very frank about it. But Taiwan is a different case. It would be interesting to see, this is my personal opinion, it would be interesting to see whether the relationship between India and Taiwan may expand to the next level of horizon, where just as India's, had deals with Philippines and Vietnam to supply BrahMos, whether that would happen in future, that is something even the Taiwanese would be interested. Whether it would happen or not, we leave it to the government of India. Only time can say.
Absolutely. Great points there. And Dr. Rath, apart from the territorial hunger and thirst that China has and the geopolitical tangent, that there is between China and the world, one thing is very, very important, that, if India wants to get to that, 5 trillion or 8 trillion or $10 trillion mark, a partner like Taiwan is a must, considering what Pathakrit also said, that if you're having a war with Ukraine, or if there's something going on in Israel and Palestine, it's not really going to impact the business of the world as much if a Taiwan force, so to speak, was to be involved. And India is definitely gaining a lot of ground when it comes to our friendship and our proximity with Taiwan.
So very true, Vineet, and thanks for having me on this. I think, I must congratulate you for bringing up this very, very strategic, important, topic for discussion. No doubt that I think, for the future, India wants to become this $5 trillion economy, or even beyond that, what we wish. And what the vision is also to be, self-dependent as well as become country or developed nation. There is no way but to, be dependent on semiconductor technology. So when I say semiconductor technology, it is just not the hardware or the supply chain of the chips, but also there is a complementary part, what brings India also into the importance. It is the software part. So this is a very strategic and very, very, I think, futuristic, collaboration. And I would also say a very natural collaboration. So as China actually, as Taiwan is actually the global supplier of, let's say, semiconductor, same way India is also the global supplier for software. And then as the economy is going more and more towards AI, LLMs and quantum computing, which is going to affect across industries, from food till satellites, from mobile phones till satellites. This becomes a very strategic, bet for any country who wants to secure its own economic future, as well as, who wants to secure its own, let's say, strength in the coming time. Typically, out of many economic theories, what I have deduced is actually when a country is actually looking strategically 20 years ahead, it has to depend on three things. Whenever we are talking about technology planning. So it requires money, it requires machine, and it requires manpower. When we are talking about semiconductor technology mapped with AI technology, which is, let's say, hardware plus software combination, if we can oversimplify it, there cannot be a better combination than, let's say, Taiwan and India. So India has got very good, let's say, resource power, very good research power, very good manpower when it comes to software, especially, when it comes to software applications and AI and, beyond AI. And when you have the tango between, a very advanced chip and then AI, this actually becomes even very, very important. Now, if we follow, just 2 years back, what US also came up with, similar kind of a vision with the chip stuff. What always people forget is, US lacks a lot of manpower. They are also struggling now, after pushing hundreds of billions of dollars, having factories, let's say, in Arizona, in Texas. But I think, they are still, not able to find the solution that, where they are going to get the manpower. And India doesn't have that issue. So, something, which is going to be 2 + 2 is 22 is the combination of, let's say, Taiwan and India. And then, if you are securing this, then how, you're going to get the investment? Investment always comes where, or money comes, the third part of 3M, always where there is geopolitical stability. So if India is going toward geopolitical stability, which we have shown from last 10 years, and Taiwan is also looking for a region which is of democracy as well as geopolitical stability, also a country which is seen actually very good, looking at our prime minister's, let's say, global popularity ranking. This also becomes very natural for Taiwan to depend on India so that, they can also de-risk themselves, like, Foxconn and let's say Acer or let's say Asus or there is only tip of the iceberg investment that has happened from the key crucial part which has happened from Taiwan in India. There can be much more. So along with Foxconn, let's say we are just doing manufacturing or let's say assembly of the Apple product line. But as we move higher up into the product line, when we take actually larger share of the dollar, what the customer is actually paying, then I think this becomes a very, very strategic one. So I won't go to the political part because this becomes very much India's interest, as well as this becomes very much naturally Taiwan's interest. So it becomes imperative as well as becomes very important that we secure the geopolitical side of the South China Sea. What is a very important aspect for that, especially having Japan there, especially having US there, especially having let's say Australia there as well as India there. So this becomes actually a very, very strategic thinking. I think enough has not been done yet by government. So we have done our semiconductor, let's say policies, let's say incentive-based manufacturing, but not at the pace at which the world is moving. So I think our government is taking the right steps in the right direction, and definitely congratulations for that. But I would actually push them to be a little bit more aggressive because this is a industry which is moving very, very aggressively, and we have the strengths. So we need to play to our strengths, as well as we are nice because we are a vibrant democracy. We have a very good democracy. We have very good stability. We're going to benefit from. So 2,700 postdocs is not a big number. I would want them to be around 25,000 postdocs because India has got very good, university system. We can learn a lot from their, manufacturing capacity building of semiconductors. Similarly, we need to invite also the Taiwanese students, into IICs, into the IITs, to understand that, how we are working in collaboration with, let's say, Google or Microsoft or let's say Qualcomm or NVIDIA. And we have those presence already in India. Maybe we are just not playing into our strength. So I would say this is a great strategic initiative.
All right.
And, more focus should be given to this. And this can take us to, great heights.
Absolutely. Great points there, Dr. Ratan. Professor Nalapat, the mobilization of the international community against China did happen, and India was at the forefront of that mobilization, with banning of the apps and a number of other steps that were taken by the Prime Minister. Do you think that momentum at this point in time has been slightly paused?
No, I'd like to say very clearly that the last 10 years have been transformational, and Prime Minister Modi is a futuristic leader. He has always looked ahead, and he's looking at Viksit Bharat, and he's working very hard towards that. May I point out that India has some invaluable strengths where software is concerned. Strengths that are not there in China, for example. I'll give you one example. You have, for example, you talk about software. We have this tremendous advantage of hundreds of millions of people having knowledge of the English language. And don't forget, when you're talking about software, you're talking about coding, you're talking about the English language. Even if you're a Chinese coder, or if you're a coder in Germany, you have to code in English. Coding is in English. So, from that point of view, we have a tremendous advantage. And in the software field, our software people have shown their skill across the world. And that is why there's such a hurry to ensure that Indians come on board. And I think that is one very big advantage. The second advantage is young designers. And may I point out that so far as China is concerned, it has got a very rapidly aging population. I mean, I've seen the Chinese population figures. In my personal view, they could be overestimating by more than 100 or 120 million, because the fact of the matter is, this one-child system, in my view, a lot of the children would be males. Possibly the male-female imbalance is much more than what the Chinese statistics provide, because a lot of families prefer to have a male child. And from that point of view, again, look at India. We have outstanding men and women and young. We have a tremendous demographic advantage over China. We have a tremendous advantage, therefore, in terms of young people who can be trained in software, who are being trained in software. So I think, frankly, where software is concerned, as is hardware, India is the future, China is the past. We have got Foxconn here. And I can tell you, it's only a matter of time before TSMC realizes that economics and brain power will need for them to invest heavily in India and in Indians.
Ambassador Mukherjee, concluding thoughts from you, Pathikrit and Dr. Rath, and then we wrap up.
But just to say that, once again, I agree with Professor Nalapat, and to say that, in fact, the commonalities, the common strengths between India and Taiwan is bound to bring us closer and closer together. Whether that will one day impact our one China policy or not is something that I don't wish to comment upon right now because it's a sensitive topic. But definitely, in a way, it does impact our one China policy because although we say we believe in one China, we are actually doing business with a part of China that is not China, and that is very much required considering the manner in which the Chinese have tried to play politics in the Northeast, have refused to accept parts of the Northeast as part of India, and have tried in every way possible to develop POK in a manner that it would one day become a vassal of China. It would not even remain with Pakistan, it would become Chinese territory. So I think that this is much required from a political perspective. And from a business perspective, we have so much in common, and I'd like to reiterate that the semiconductors, in fact, is one of the greatest strengths of Taiwan, and if we can manage to use that to our advantage, I think that that would be one of the biggest benefits, Vineet, of this growing relationship. And the interview was extremely interesting, much required, and the Indian audience needs to understand such programs, how important Taiwan is to India. Vineet.
Pathikrit?
Vineet, I think there is a lot of similarity between Israel and Taiwan in terms of how they are both, driven by innovation and surrounded by threats. And that kind of an environment, the way Indo-Israeli relationship has flourished, I think a lot can be done between Indo-Taiwanese relationship as well. As Satishji also mentioned, you might see this relationship being extended beyond semiconductor to machine learning, AI, 6G development, drone tech, and you never know, there can be a defense cooperation in future without explicitly diluting the one China policy. India can do everything else. So I think there are a lot of areas of convergence. I would love to see an IIT being set up in Taiwan. I would love to see, there are already 250 Taiwanese companies operating in India. So I think they should try to make India as a preferred destination, because we, much like the Taiwanese, love the whole concept of independence and free speech. And I think, the best thing, as I mentioned, I would love to see what happens in future if a day comes when India, decides to sell some of their air defense systems and cruise missiles, if not the ballistic missiles, to Taiwan. I think deterrence is something which is better than saying that I would come to fight your war. That rarely happens. Back to you, Vinny.
Dr. Rath?
Yeah, Vinit, I will again say the same stuff. So let's say it's the hardware power of, let's say, Taiwan, it's the software power of India. This is a very natural alliance and then very natural partnership. This has got the potential of making 2 + 2 = 22, and this is what the world is also going towards. So India needs to have this strategic policies like we had, let's say after the Russia-Ukraine war, we could still retain the supply chain of, let's say, oil, because, this was needed for Indians. And this was a very crucial part of our official, let's say, foreign relationship diplomacy. Same way, the semiconductor is as crucial as oil, and it is going to be even much more crucial than oil. So is also software and AI. So we need to have this policy for next 20 years that, how India's technology and AI policy is going to define our economy and who are our strategic partners. So, Taiwan very naturally becomes that partner because of TSMC and Foxconn and other guys. Same way is ASML, same way is Netherlands and IMEC. So I think, this needs to be thought in a very parallel way. We don't have to be really headstrong with China, which is unnecessary stress. I would say that, we need to act smart, that, this is our technology policy, this is how we are looking ahead into 20 years, and that's how we are working. We are democracy, so that's how we are natural allies. Similar way, I think, our smart geopolitical, let's say, international relationship, which is very nicely done over the last 2 decades. So the similar stuff can be done, that, we are a one world, one family kind of concept. Our cultural heritage says that, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, so we welcome everyone. And this has got great benefits. Taiwan can become, one of the, major, maybe top 5 strategic international partners of India in the coming decade.
Absolutely. Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, that is the mantra that was iterated by Dr. Rath as well. This is a partnership for the ages, not just for the time being or any kind of a convenience. So appreciate everyone joining us and speaking their hearts out on this very important initiative which was taken by NewsX.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.